Наш следующий спикер много лет занимается этой темой профессионально, с точки зрения науки, для многих это может быть приятно. Доктор Дэвид Карузо, исследователь Центра эмоционального интеллекта Йельского университета. Он один из основателей оригинальной научной концепции эмоционального интеллекта. Да? Мы сейчас много об этом говорим. И он сделал для нас запись на тему роли отца в формировании эмоционального интеллекта у детей, которую мы можем сейчас послушать, поэтому передаем ему слово.
Hello, my name is David Caruso, and I want to speak to you today about the role of fathers in the development of emotional intelligence skills in their children. You can see my credentials here. I've been married for almost 40 years. My wife is a child psychologist. We have 3 adult children. 2 of them are married, so I'm a father-in-law of 2, and a grandfather of 3 children, and soon, the end of March, we'll have 4 grandchildren. So very excited about all that. Now, I have other credentials as well. I work at Yale College in the dean's office. At the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, I have a research affiliation, and I run the Emotional Intelligence Skills Group. You can see some of the other things that I've done as well. Well, I want to tell you some stories first to start out with, and the first part of the story begins more than 35 years ago when my wife Nancy and I had our first child, just before our daughter was born, I got a job working in Manhattan, in Midtown, and I would take the train every morning from Connecticut, about an hour, into New York City, to Grand Central Station. And it was a great job. It was for a market research company. I enjoyed it a lot. But I get home later in the evening, and as a result of my training, actually, I was the one to make the dinner for our family. I would bathe our daughter, read to her, and spend time with her. She wouldn't go to sleep till about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. But that kind of got old. And after a year or so, I found another job closer to home where I could leave later, come home earlier. I could even come home for lunch to spend time with my family. Because the family was growing. We had 3 children altogether over the years. And it wasn't that I was just a father in name. I was very actively involved. I shaped my career to focus on my role as husband and father. And it was fabulous. It's the greatest job in the world. But some years after that, I was working for another company, and the job went away. And I had a choice. I could try to find another corporate job or go out on my own. And I decided to go out on my own, to work for myself, to give me flexibility, to spend more time as a father, to cook for them, to take them to school, to pick them up, while my wife, Nancy, could focus on her child psychology practice. We did some great things. Even as a professional, I took our 2 younger children to Japan on a business trip. I coached, you can see back here, I coached 14 Little League baseball teams over the years. Not that I'm an athlete, and not that I know much about baseball, but I knew about children and how to motivate them and how to appreciate them. I struggled when our children became older as a father. Like, why do teenagers and then young adults need a father at all? And that was a hard time for me. It took a while to understand that I was still their father, and how could I participate in their lives and show them my support and my interest and my love for them. So our 2 older children, as I mentioned earlier, are married. We stay together. We talk a lot. We try to do things as much as we can. And I can talk to them about work and relationships. And in the last few years, I can talk to my children who are now parents. So as I mentioned, Nancy and I are grandparents of 3 children, soon 4. And we're pretty active. And we're very hands-on. I love my children and I love my grandchildren. It's a very different role as a grandfather, I will tell you that. But we're still pretty active, as you can see here. Don't get to see them as often as I wish, which is a big problem. But it's a wonderful role. You know, one of the things, though, is interesting that when we first became grandparents, people said, oh, you know, it's the greatest thing in the world to be a grandparent. And I don't agree with that. For me, the greatest role or job in the world is to be a parent. And I think in part that's due to the fact of the career choices I made, to spend time with them, to be really involved on a daily basis. As a grandparent, I'm not making up for lost time, if you will, but it's wonderful. I enjoy it a lot. But what do you do? So how do you help children, and in this case, grandchildren, develop critical skills, to develop their emotional intelligence skills? It takes time. It takes modeling, positive modeling. And when you mess up, to say it, to be active in their lives. We are big readers. And so you can see some of these pictures we're reading, and very active and very involved. And play, active play, and imagination. It also helps to be willing to be a little silly at times. So to really engage in creative and imaginative play. Now, I debated whether to show these pictures to you, but why not? I'm very proud of my ability to play as if I were a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old. Again, it's one of the many skills I think I have to bring to the role of being a father and being a grandfather. But that may not be you. You may not be willing to do these things. So what can you do to help you develop your child in general and your children's emotional intelligence skills? So many of you might be thinking, okay, like, how do you become a good father? And for me, I did not have a positive role model. I have 3 brothers. I'm sort of in the middle there. My father, you can see him here, joined the United States Marines. He was a soldier. And he acted like it. You know, not a warm and loving, supportive person. That was his generation. You know, he tried, he did his best. But that's not how I learned all this. In fact, I probably learned just the opposite. Boys don't cry. We're tough. We don't talk about how we feel. Attention to our emotions, it just wasn't there. And this is very typical. So where did I learn this from? If not from my family, not from my brothers. To this day, my brothers and I are very competitive. We like to fight. We fight for everything. And so it's not from them either. So where did this come from? Well, it came from a couple of places. It came from 3 people. On the top left is a picture of me being held by my grandmother. On the left are my two of my brothers. My 3rd brother is 10 years younger, who was not in this photo. My grandmother was born and raised in Italy in a small farming community. She came to the United States and barely spoke any English. Even during the years that I was with her, very little English. But what she did, she basically raised me because she lived with us. She taught me that it was okay to laugh and to cry. She taught me how to cook, and she loved me. She gave me that unconditional, positive regard. Well, many years later, I met my wife, who, as I said, is a child psychologist. And she really changed my world in a very major way, to talk about dreams and hopes, talk about childhood, talk about how you felt. Another huge influence on my life was her father, my father-in-law, on the bottom. Although he was trained as a lawyer and an accountant, he was very feelings oriented. He had a lot of psychological insight. But even more, what he did is he showed me that fathers can show love for children. He showed me that fathers can forgive their children when they do something stupid or mess up. Great role models in different ways. And I think this is where I learned why it's important to be a good father and what that means. It's from people like this that we learn. So then, how can you help your child develop their emotional intelligence skills? Your story is going to be different, and it's not going to be mine. So no matter what your background is or your family, there are things that you can do. And I'd like to share some of those ideas with you. Well, depending on the age of your children, you come home at the end of work. Daddy, how was your day? What do you indicate? Fine, okay, oh, it was a good day. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. So I'd like you to try a few things. In order to respond to those kinds of questions, you need the emotional resources to be a good father. These are things that you know that you should do. But the lower your set point, the more patience and support you will have to answer that how are you question if you do these things. So, daddy, how was your day? How do you ask that question? How do you answer that question? And here's the key, without overwhelming your child. So you can model some of these things. Sweetheart, what was the best part of school today? Not how was school, because you're going to get the fine. What was the best part? What was the most difficult part of school today? What's on your mind? What are you thinking about? And then you can share. You know, I had a really good meeting at work today. I learned something interesting. But what did you do at school? So share some of yourself. Promote open dialogue. Build trust without overwhelming your child. That's the key. And I think a lot of parents worry about that. Well, if I am totally honest with my child, they're going to get scared. They're going to get worried. And I understand that. I am not encouraging you to be totally open. You have to understand the age of your child and their ability to handle tough information. So how do you do that? So let's say you had a stressful day. Daddy, how was your day? Well, Daddy had a tough day at work. It's very stressful. But I'm so happy to be home and see you. Right? So you can balance that honesty with that supportive and safe message to promote openness and trust. Let's say you had a fight with your spouse. Your children will see this. Daddy and mommy had a fight. But we both love you a lot, and we are not mad at you. I think it's when parents try to hide this stuff, you also begin to lose trust. But it's very important to stay open, but within boundaries. You need to give your child information that they can manage and process. Otherwise, it's not fair. It's not fair to them. Use emotion words. Don't just say you're fine. Just say, well, I'm sort of calm right now. Or, oh, it's Friday night and we're going to have some fun tomorrow. I'm very excited and delighted about going to the park tomorrow. Now, you do want to be careful with the extremes of these words. You may not want to say that you're frightened. You might want to say, you know, but I'm a little worried actually about some things, sweetheart. I am worried. And again, note of reassurance, but I'm happy to see you. I love you and I'm glad I'm here with you. So be careful. You want to both use emotion words, but you want to match them to the developmental level of your child and make sure they feel safe. Read to your child. You saw some of those pictures. Pick books that send really good messages. One of the things that I my wife and I agree on about books is that some books for children aren't really great. And so there are many books that we will read and we change the words. So they're more supportive, so they're more, well, emotionally intelligent. We're still struck by, not just books from decades ago, but books that are written today. They're not all great. They're not all helpful in developing these skills. So when you're reading, and this can be almost anything, you want to relate the book to your child's life. You might see it. This is about the hungry bunny. How did the bunny feel? How does the bunny feel? Why do you think Bunny felt sad? Here's another great question. How would you feel if you were the bunny? Now, again, depending on the age of the child, they might say sad or worried, but you can also ask. And, well, I think Bunny was a little worried that he couldn't find his carrots for lunch. So you want to actually structure this in a way that doesn't overwhelm your child, but they begin to relate these events to themselves and they build their skills. So what are some other ways to build the emotional intelligence skills of children? Share. You can share an experience when you were that age. When I remember my first day of school, and I was kind of disappointed. And then you would say, why? Again, to always be careful, not to overwhelm your child. You want to model emotion management. So maybe you're very frustrated. You just got an email from your boss. It's like, or a friend called you and you're annoyed. Say it. I'm frustrated now, so I'm going to wait to call my friend back. Or, I just got an email from my boss and it makes me a little frustrated. So I'm going to take a deep breath and think about it, and I will email him later. So you can verbalize those kinds of things. And of course, be willing to be silly and play to show and express your emotions. What other ways can fathers help? Here's one big one: choose your issues. Meaning, your child does something, you've said 10 times, go clean up your room. He hasn't cleaned up the room. Is it worth it? I mean, life is short. And while you do want rules at your home, I understand that. Choose your issues. Is it worth it? And choose your time. Many years ago, when our youngest, I think he was 8 years old, all weekend we said, clean up your room, and he didn't. Monday morning, I go into his room. It's a disaster, but he was just about to leave for school. I did not want to argue with him on his way to school at the beginning of the day, and I wouldn't see him all day. Reappraise the situation. This happens in my wife's practice a lot. Parents are upset that their young son is angry all the time and acting out. And what she says is, why is your son angry? Why is he acting out? Something's bothering him, and that's the way he's expressing it. So I know it's difficult when a child acts out or acts angrily or yells at you, but it doesn't make them feel better. It's an expression of something that's going on. So realize something's bothering them and ask how you can help. The last point is very, very powerful to validate. Child expresses a worry or a fear, and you think, you shouldn't be worried about that. That doesn't work very well. You may not agree, but you can say, sweetheart, I can see how you might feel that way. I can see how you might feel that way. I would not. But that validation is a way to build trust and a way to build a relationship. So we're here today in part because my colleagues in Moscow have come up with a fabulous measure of emotional intelligence. It's called the Mesquite youth version. I am very excited. They are wonderfully talented people, really excellent researchers, and just highly emotionally intelligent and decent people. So the Mesquite Mayer Salovey Caruso Emotional Intelligence Test is being released in Russia for children. It's an objective measure of emotional intelligence skills in children. I think it will be enormously helpful in all sorts of ways to you, to parents, to schools, to teachers. It is an ability measure. That means a child will look at a photo, for instance, and indicate how the person's feeling. And there are better and worse answers. There's many questions like this. It results in a score. And it's extremely well researched. And as I said, I am very excited to be talking to you about this today. And you can learn more from my colleagues. So with that, spasiba. I want to thank you. I want to really have you consider for a moment that the greatest job you will ever have is to be a parent. The greatest role you will ever have is that of father. I feel that every single day. And I have photos like this to remind me of that. I have these hats up here in my office to remind me of what's really important. I have photos of my children and families. I have on my Zoom background pictures of my grandchildren. You will not get this right. You will make mistakes. I made a lot of them, and I still do. And when I do, I try to point it out, and I try to own up to it and apologize. But thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. And again, thank you to my colleagues at Katika for their amazing work in bringing the Mesquite youth version to Russia. So thank you so much.